It is 7 p.m. Today is Monday, the 11th day of January, 2021, and this is the annual reorganization meeting. First order of business is roll call. Mrs. Green?
Here.
Mr. Ruggiero?
Present.
Mr. Manley?
Here.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Here.
And Mr. Piacquadio.
Here.
Okay, everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States
of
of
America.
and to the
And to the
republic for which it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
For all.
for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Supervisor, any changes to the agenda?
I have no changes.
I have none.
Nope, none.
Okay, next we go to item 5. It'll be the administration of oath to Councilman Anthony R. Lobiondo.
All right, so with that, I'm just going to go down the hall here and join Anthony, so just stand by.
Want me in there?
Work here.
Sure. You're not muted, right? I guess you're gonna stand on this left. Okay. So you get the fact, let's get them all in here. So
We good? Maybe we're gonna throw them back or we get them all? Even if
you
they're.
can take a look ahead.
Is that good? You wanna raise your right hand? Everybody's in? Okay. Okay. Repeat after me. I, Anthony Lobiondo,
I, Anthony Lobianco,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully
the
discharge
duties of
the duties of
Councilman of the Town of Newburgh
councilman for the town of Newburgh
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everybody.
Anthony, if you have a word or two.
Yes, just very briefly, difficult times having to be sworn in via Zoom, but we're making the best of it. We are, as always, moving forward, persevering in all difficult times. Last time I stood here, it was a little bit warmer weather. It was in July. You were appointed councilman for the past 6 months, and it was my pleasure to serve in that role. I can honestly say now, after going through a somewhat difficult campaign because of the pandemic, it is my pleasure and my honor to serve as your duly elected town councilman. I just want to thank everyone who's helped me along the way, especially Supervisor Piaquadio, my wife Juliana, who's my campaign manager and love partner, and so helpful in everything. My son Michael and my parents are here. I want to thank them very much. My son Christian Lobiando is a cadet at the Air Force Academy. Hopefully he's going to be able to join us virtually. But I also especially want to thank all of the people who came out to support me and to vote for me. Thousands of people who voted in this election, who put their trust in me. And I'm very eager to continue the good work of the town and to serve as your councilman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations. This one just.
I'll have to tell John that I saw you tonight, because we saw you at the fundraiser,
Yes.
and, so everything is.
How is he?
He's good, but, he was playing sharp with the new officers at the ambulance corps tonight before I had to come here. And I got to meet 4 new policemen that we just hired. It's been busy, yeah. I love it.
I don't know if you can hear me, but Gil and Anthony, a couple of others are still muted.
Here.
Joseph, I guess we could move on to 6.
Okey-doke. Next, we go on to item 6, approval to hire full-time police officers. The first police
Yes.
officer is Sam Miller.
Tonight, we're actually hiring 4 police officers. So the first one is Sam Miller, so we're looking for a motion to hire Sam Miller as a police officer at an annual salary of $58,769 with a starting date of January 25th, 2021. And these are all from the fund appropriation 001-3120-0100-000. Someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
I'll second it. And on Sam Miller, maybe check for the chief. I believe he should be also the 26th also. The 3 going to the academy should be the 26th. The one that's already certified should be the 25th, I believe.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, if we make the starting date, well, let's amend that to say the 25th, and then it can't be wrong, right? All right,
Sounds
that's-
good to me.
Okay, any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we have the approval for Officer Greg Fury.
All right, and again, we're looking to hire Mr. Fury. Our annual salary of $64,280 they're all from the same fund appropriation, a starting date of January 25th, 2021. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make
I'll
that.
make that motion.
Councilman Manley made that motion. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second it then.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we have the third officer, Joni Quezada.
All right, so we're looking to hire Mr. Quezada at an annual salary of $58,769 with a starting date of January 26th, 2021. The fund appropriation from the same account. Someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Councilman Lobiondo, did you second that motion?
No, I did not.
That was me, Scott Manley.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
And the last officer is Officer Patrick Toomey.
All right, so we're looking to hire Mr. Toomey at an annual salary of $58,769 with a starting date of January 26, 2021. The appropriation is the same as all. Someone make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second? May I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 7, approval of the audit.
Looking for a motion to approve this audit in the amount of $491,760.70.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 8, adoption of schedules for the year 2021. First
All right.
item is schedule of town board meetings as presented.
So we're looking for a motion for the town board meetings as presented. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item B, schedule of holidays.
Again, we're looking for a motion for the schedules that presented of holidays.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 9, appointment of attorney for the town, Mark Taylor.
All right, so we're looking for a motion to reappoint Mark Taylor as the attorney for the town. So I want to make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs.
Want
Green,
to say,
Yeah.
well,
go ahead.
I did want to say that Mark Taylor has always done an outstanding job, and he will continue to do so. So now we can
Thank
vote.
you. Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, item 10, appointment of labor attorney, Elaine Gold.
So does someone want to make a motion to keep Elaine Gold, our labor attorney?
I'll
So
make the
moved.
motion.
I'll second your motion, Anthony. I think that was Anthony.
Yes.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 11, engineer for the town, McGooey, Hauser, and Edsel.
Right, someone want to make the motion for McGooey, Hauser, and that's will be the engineer for the town.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Go ahead, Paul. Oh, yeah, sure. Anthony.
Okay. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 12, the appointment of tax certiorari attorneys and consultant. First item is David Murphy of Hacker and Murphy Limited Liability Corporation.
So
Right,
moved.
someone-
Sorry about that, Mr. Piaquadio.
That's okay. Betty made the motion for Hacker and Murphy, David Hacker and Murphy.
May I have a second, please?
second,
Was that Councilman Ruggiero?
yes, it was.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next appointment discussion is Federal Appraisal Limited Liability Corporation.
All right, does someone want to make a motion for federal appraisal that assist in our appraisals? Mainly for power plants and whatnot, but someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Last appointment is Lawrence Farbstein, Industrial and Utility Consultant.
Yes, and again, we've used Larry for a consultant in the past. Someone want to make that motion for Farbstein?
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second
Second.
it.
Councilman Lobiondo seconded. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 13, appointment of bond counsel. Douglas Goodfriend of Oric, Harrington, and Sutcliffe.
All right, so we used them for a number of years for a bond counsel. Someone want to make that motion? Good.
So moved.
second,
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Item 14, appointment of financial advisor, Munistat Services Incorporated.
All right, someone want to make a motion for Munistat to be our financial advisor?
So move.
I'll second.
Second.
Councilman Manley seconded. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
And item 15, appointment of Freedom of Information Law officers. Item A, Lisa M. Ayers for Freedom of Information Officer.
Someone want to make that motion for Lisa?
I'll make the motion.
Looks like a tie.
Councilman Lobiando made the motion. May I have a second?
I'll second it then.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Item B, Tiffany M. Ray for Deputy Freedom of Information Officer.
So move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Item 16, appointment of planning board members. And this is a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2023.
All right, so we're
First
gonna look for
First
reappointment.
reappointment is Stephanie DeLuca.
Stephanie DeLuca will be the first one. Someone want to make that motion? This is until 2023, December 31st.
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Second reappointment is Clifford Brown.
Someone want to make the motion for Clifford Brown to be reappointed till December 31st, 2023.
So move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Third reappointment is Kenneth Menerick.
So does someone want to make a motion for Mr. Memerick until 2023?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Item 17, appointment of Zoning Board of Appeals member. This is a 5-year term that ends December 31st, 2025. The reappointment of Darren Scalzo.
Does someone want to make a motion for Darren Scalzo to reappoint him until 2025 on the ZBA?
I'll make.
I'll
the-
make the motion.
Councilman Ruggiero made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Item 18, confirmation of appointments of clerk to town justice for Judge Martini's court, Isaias Mustafa.
All right, so what we're going to do here on the first one too, on Mustafa, is the town board is actually going to confirm the appointment by the judge, Martini. So someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Then for Judge Clarino's court, it's Abigail Puntar.
So again, we're looking for a motion to confirm Judge Clarino's appointment.
I'll make that motion as well.
I'll second it.
Councilman Manley, did you second that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next is item 19, appointment of town safety officer for 2021, Gerald Canfield.
Someone want to make a motion for Mr. Canfield to be our safety officer again for 2021?
So move.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Then item 20, appointment of confined space officer for 2021, Gerald Canfield.
All right, once again, we're looking for a motion again for Jerry Canfield to be our confined space officer, which he has been for the last several years.
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second, please?
second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Item 21, appointment of town assessor for 2021, Lori Cody, who is an Orange County employee.
All right, so we're looking for a motion to acknowledge Lori Cody as the town assessor, as she is an Orange County employee. Someone want to make that motion?
So move.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 22. Item A, appointment of court officers, bingo inspectors, and crossing guards.
So we're looking for a motion as presented. These are the same as last year. We might have one resigned since, but the same. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 23.
No,
Designation.
did we
Oh,
do
I'm sorry.
patrons?
No, I'm sorry,
22B?
22B.
All right, so we're looking for a motion for matrons as presented too.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Item 23, designation of official publications. First publications, the Mid-Hudson Times.
So does someone want to make a motion for the Mid-Hudson Times?
So move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
The second publication is the Orange County Post.
So does someone want to make a motion for the Orange County Post to keep them as their official newspaper?
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Ruggiero made the motion. May I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
I am voting no because they do not give very, very little even of coverage to incidents that occur in the town of Newburgh.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando, Mr. Lobiando,
Did we lose Anthony? All right. We're gonna have to check. I don't know what the problem is. Technical difficulties if his iPad dropped out.
So he's in the other room. Yeah.
Bobby's gonna check it out real quick. Is he back in? All right. If he gets back on, I'm gonna have to ask him if he's gonna vote to keep this newspaper as the official.
No, he's muted right now. Anthony, if you can hear me, you're on mute.
Is he
There we
there?
go.
Anthony, you there?
I'm back.
The motion on the floor was to keep the Orange County Post as a newspaper. There's been
Yes.
one no. You're yes. Okay, so we got a yes here, Joe.
Okay, and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Okay. Next, we go on to item 24 for the Association of Towns. Item A, appointment of official delegate, Elizabeth Green.
Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
I should abstain from voting for myself, so I abstain.
Okay. Mr. Ruggiero?
Yes,
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
And Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
And then we have the appointment of the official alternate delegate, Scott Manley.
Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero?
Yes,
Mr. Manley?
Abstain.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
And Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 25, establishment of reimbursements. Item A, for New York City Association of Towns Annual Conference, which may be a moot point, $80 per day with receipts.
All right, someone want to make that motion of $80 per day if it ever happens?
so moved.
I'll second it with receipts.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero?
yes,
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
And Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes, and now it's for others, $40 per day with receipts. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero?
yes,
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
And Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Okay, next we go on to item 26, designation of official bank depositories.
So does someone want to make a motion for Class Bank? We've been doing business with them for a while.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero?
yes,
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes, and now we'll go TD Bank. Someone will make a motion for TD Bank.
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
The second went to Councilman Ruggiero. Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero?
yes,
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes, now we'll go a motion for M&T Bank.
so moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero?
yes,
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes, and now Orange Bank and Trust Company. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero?
Yes,
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next item, 27, authorize town supervisor to sign checks, drafts, and notes.
Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green?
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero?
Yes,
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Yes.
And Mr. Piaquadio.
Abstain.
Next, we go on to item 28. Authorize supervisor to pay electric, internet, cable, telephone, and other utilities and debt services, and pay umpires, referees, scorekeepers, and police department cash allotments prior to audit.
Someone want to make that motion?
so moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes. I abstain, I'm sorry.
You got Item 29, authorize supervisor to approve budget transfers up to $7,500.
I'll make the motion if you need it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Abstain.
Next, we go on to item 30, approval of salaries as scheduled.
All right, so we're looking for a motion, approval of salaries as presented. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make that
I'll
motion.
make, and I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Do we lose him again?
Did we lose Anthony?
Looks like we did again.
He'll come back.
What's his problem? His battery down there, Bobby?
Might be the Wi-Fi. He's probably gonna come right back.
So we're going down to check on Anthony now.
If I
He's
would've
back?
left-
He's
yeah,
back.
If I would have left, then he would have been waiting in the woods.
Is he back
He's
in?
back.
Anthony, you there?
Inside.
He's muted again.
Okay, I'm back.
Here he is.
Okay,
I think the connection might be a little poor in this room.
all right. So we're voting on the salaries as presented. I think we're looking for your vote on that.
Yes, I was able to hear that. Yes, I vote yes.
okay, and Mr. Piaquadio.
I vote yes.
Okay, next we go on to item 31, supervisor appointments.
Okay, so these are just my appointments. We don't need any vote on it, so.
Okay,
So secretary to the supervisor will be Melissa Clark Dawson. She's done a fine job. Deputy supervisor is going to be Scott Manley. A historian will be Alan Crawford. And the liaison officers for the town departments will be as attached. So that's it. So we could go to 32, I guess, Joe.
okay, item 32, appointment of town supervisor as marriage officer.
Someone want to make that motion?
I'll
we'll
make
make that motion gladly, because.
And I'll second it then.
Mr. Pequadio has done a charitable, great job this year with having the pandemic for
Thank you.
people to, grandmothers
Thank
to
you.
watch their granddaughters get married from the window of a nursing home and a number of those. So I congratulate him on such a fine job that he does.
Thank you.
And Councilman Ruggiero, you second the motion. Any discussion?
Yes.
Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Then we go on to item 33, resolution of the town board for the blanket undertaking.
All right, so this blanket undertaking deals with the bonding and insurance for elected officials. Does someone want to make that motion on this blanket undertaking?
I'll make the motion.
May I have
I'll
a second,
second it.
please? Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilman. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 34, town clerk's appointments. Item A, Lisa Ayers, first deputy town clerk, and Tiffany Ray, second deputy town clerk.
Very
So
good,
moved.
Joe. No,
Okey-doke.
these are just Joe's appointments, I think. so
oh,
we're
that's
good
right,
on
I don't
these.
need to approve.
That's right.
Thank you.
Now,
Next
Joe,
we-
can you see if it's Deborah Smith in her office? You can see if the light's on? Because she should be
Hold-
doing these next two.
Hold on, please.
Bobby, is she in the meeting anyplace? Deborah Smith? Because she told me she wanted to do it herself earlier. But
If she is, she's not here under her team. So
yeah,
only Debbie we have is Debbie Fent.
no,
So
okay. I don't know how many tuned in here for the first night for this meeting, but it's been a great night to watch TV instead of this meeting. We're moving slow here.
it's one of the biggest meetings.
Huh?
This is one of the biggest meetings we've had.
Yeah,
Deb-
25.
Deborah Smith is not in her office.
okay. So then let me do this. I consulted with her earlier, and I know that Deborah Smith, who is the receiver of taxes, wants her first deputy to be Donna Kuchera, and her second deputy to be Priscilla Weed. So that being said, we could move on to 36, Joseph.
Okay, item 36, 2021 mileage reimbursement in accordance with the Internal Revenue Service schedule.
All right, someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
What is the amount?
I believe it's
Oh.
57.5, that sound right?
Yeah,
I
Is the same as last year?
No, it's went up, actually. I think it's
Oh.
57 cents or something, but whatever
Yeah.
it is, it is. Where the IRS says it, we'll go with it, right?
Okay.
I don't want to put the wrong amount down.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next is item 37, work week for elected officials shall be 30 hours.
all right, someone want to make that motion?
So move.
second,
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next, item 38, appointment of certified public accountants for the town, RPT CPAs of Newburgh, New York.
someone want to make that motion for RBT?
So move.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next, item 39, appointment of public service review consultants. First one is McGooey, Hauser, and Etzel, and its sub-consultants.
all right, someone want to make that motion? McGoey, Hauser, and Etzel.
so
I'll
move,
make the motion.
Councilman Ruggiero made the motion. May I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next appointment is Lawrence Farbstein Industrial and Utility Consultants.
all right, someone want to make that motion for Larry Farbstein?
So
I'll make
move.
it.
Councilwoman Green made the motion. May I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next, we go on to item 40, Traffic Safety Committee. First, item A, Chairman to be Councilman Paul Ruggiero.
all right, so someone want to make that motion?
So move.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
abstain,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes, and the second motion here will be, the rest of the committee will be Police Chief Bruce Campbell, Highway Superintendent Mark Hall, and Anthony Marino, who has been on this committee. He also happens to be a member of the zoning board of appeals, but has no tie-in with this particular committee. So someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiando,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes,
Next, we are on to item 41 for comments and announcements from the town board members.
And what I want to do first is read the accomplishments of the board. And these accomplishments are not of my accomplishments, but the entire board, and many due to our dedicated town employees that actually made them possible. So I want to read them off. And I don't know, Terry, but it's been a very difficult year to do anything. I just hope and pray it gets better in 2021. Well, here's some of the things that we've done here in 2020. We attained ownership of the Desmond campus through a grant from the Kaplan Family Foundation. We promoted 4 police sergeants. We made a new DARE officer. We attained and assisted with a grant for water and sewer feasibility study on the west side of Orange Lake. The town clerk implemented an electronic FOIL software system, making it easier to access public records. The clerk also issued over 200 marriage licenses, double from 2019. Highway resurfaced 15 miles of roadway. We completed a zoning text change to allow daycare centers and preschool in the B zone. We began work on a tree preservation local law. We obtained a grant for the Justice Court, a JCAP grant. We purchased additional property to protect the water district. We joined the west side of Apple Valley with the east side of Apple Valley, a roast and treatment plant, eliminating the old plant on the west side by crossing under 9W. We obtained a grant also for improvements on this project on the east side of 9W. We received funding for DWI program. We made a new Commissioner of Parks and Recreation, James Pursuti. We've done design engineering for the Elmhurst Avenue culvert replacement, which is due to be replaced soon. We passed a local solar and wind energy exemption law. We've extended our agreement with Orange County for dial-a-bus. We dedicated Tarbin Road as a new road. We passed a local law for records retention. I'll try to follow this one. We completed renovations of 21 Hudson Plaza, which is a donated building to the town from Adecta Rendano. Became the new home for code compliance and a section for animal shelter. We received a $175,000 grant to renovate this building. I want to especially thank Councilman Paul Ruggiero for his help in overseeing the construction and saving the town large amounts of money by doing so. Because of the new 21 Hudson Plaza space, we moved engineering and water and sewer department offices into the former code compliance building at 300 Gardner Town Road. This move made much needed space for Charlene Black in the personnel office and town hall. We moved the water and sewer department from the public service building, which was part of the courthouse upstairs, which created much needed space for the Justice Court. So all those moves were done, and we picked up a lot more space and operate more efficiently. We've done a proclamation supporting small businesses the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and we approved the budget for 2021, keeping it under the 2% cap. So that's accomplishments, and then I'm going to read our goals in a second for 21 as far as I'm concerned. But with that, I think I'm going to go first to Betty Green, if she has any comments or plans for the new year. Betty?
Well, I'm very proud of all the board members and all the employees that helped with all the changes we accomplished in 2020. I have a number one hit parade of something that I would like to see done. And I've mentioned it to the board, and I think they're in agreement that we review and make any revisions that need to be done in our comprehensive plan. As the town grows, we have to stay with the growth and take care of longtime residents and new residents and work it out that the town moves forward. So that's my big goal for 2021, is that we redo and review the comprehensive plan.
Very good, Betty, and it's a good one. So with that, I'm going to ask Councilman Ruggiero, any comments or
Betty,
plans?
Betty, I agree with you with the comprehensive plan.
Thank
We
you.
need to address that and we need to look at that again. It's been long overdue. That is definitely a goal. Also is getting the Desmond State up and running and having classes and getting that out to the public.
I agree
And
with you.
My main two goals, and I just want to wish everybody Happy New Year who's listening in, and a healthy, safe, Happy New Year to all.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Scott, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just a few quick things. First, I want to stand to be corrected on the IRS mileage. It is 56 cents. It was 57.5, so it actually went down.
I thought so.
All right, thank you.
I know we have some people on tonight. Real quick, I do my updates constantly to keep everybody up on COVID. Now we're doing a lot with the vaccines, and today was the big day for the locals for the 1B. It comes to find out Orange County is supposed to have 3,000 doses, and New York State, for some reason, only sent 200. Most counties in the state only got 100 to 200. So that's why it was a disaster for people trying to get vaccines registered to go. So just to let you know, hopefully that'll be fixed the next few days. My update will be out soon. As far as goals, I'm excited about the Desmond and whatever Jimmy Pursuti and everybody else needs. I'm excited about that. I know Anthony Lobiondo's very much with the rowing and kayaking, and I'm hoping to get the property we have on the river get going. I know Anthony's going to be jumping right on that. Speaking of Anthony, we have both Anthony and Paul Ruggiero, both small business owners. Anthony, when he joined got onto the board, he helped me out a lot with all the small businesses that we help out. And I also talked to Bill Fioravanti from the county to help out businesses, big and small, to get involved in the town. I know we have some big ones and small ones coming that I'm very excited about. I have spoken to the chief and read the whole books on the 203 mandate from the state, and we'll have something for the public to get involved with very shortly. But very excited, and we're really working on that. I can't wait for the public to get involved, which will be shortly. Other than that, I think we have a great board. We got some great stuff going. And other than that, I want to thank everybody and Happy New Year. And sorry this meeting is so long, but it's all stuff that Albany has us do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Scott. Anthony, you have anything for us?
Yes, just briefly, I just want to wish everyone a Happy New Year. I see that we have some additional folks joining us tonight. I thank you for your patience in sitting through sometimes this dry subject matter. We do appreciate the enthusiasm that anyone in the town brings, and it's good to be involved and see what this great town is doing. One thing, Gil, that you didn't mention is that we just recently also approved body cameras for our town police officers. That's something that Scott and I had talked about a few months ago. I think it's a very good thing for the public at large, as well as the safety of our police officers. And also the funding for that was, I believe, paid for by forfeiture funds. So it was a win-win for our town. Just picking up on a couple of things that Scott had mentioned. As a small business owner, I'm an attorney with my wife, Juliana, and we know the struggles that people are going through due to COVID and the changing of the environment completely. As far as the town is concerned, we assisted with these fall into local expo, fall fest in the fall. We had a very good turnout. We got, I think, a lot of help out to some of the small businesses, and we want to continue along that line in assisting and promoting small businesses. We've talked with some of the business owners about a small business alliance, and that's something that I know Scott and I and Paul as well are going to be working on. Again, you mentioned our waterfront property. Fantastic, beautiful area. Given the circumstances, again, we've really had an opportunity to see how important our green spaces are. Chadwick Lake Park has become a jewel in this area, and we're very lucky to have it. And our goal should be to try to copy and mimic the success that we've had there at both the Desmond Estate as well as our riverfront property. So with that, thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thank you, Anthony. So real quickly, I want to go into what the plans for 2021 as I see them. Recreation programs under the leadership of James Pursuti, our commissioner, and Jason Seeley will basically remain the same with one great addition. The town has obtained ownership of the Desmond campus through the generosity of the Kaplan Family Foundation, and a special thank you to Mr. Kaplan and his daughter Joan. The town, as you know, we probably heard this several times, but we plan to reinstate educational programs, add trails and an arboretum on the 26-acre park. Hopefully we will have some programs in place by the spring, but this will depend on the health of the nation. Let's talk about police. I know Anthony touched upon some of this already, but we will continue to have a fully staffed police department under the leadership of Chief Bruce Campbell to provide safety for all our residents. All officers will be equipped with body-worn cameras. That purchase order has already been placed. And again, it was with drug seizure money to better keep a record of what happened when encounters are questioned. We will continue to have a police department that is capable, educated, and always ready to help and serve our residents while always being accountable for their actions. And we will deliver a plan in accordance with the governor's executive order 203. With that, let's go to highway. The number of highway employees will remain the same to keep our 170 miles of road passable and open and safe. We will complete approximately resurfacing of 20 miles of roadway in 2021, and that is under the leadership of Mark Hall and his outstanding staff. Town Clerk Joe Petty, who's with us here tonight too, but he will continue to seek a grant for and hopefully implement a record scanning and retention system, which he's been working on in some time. I will continue to lobby Albany to find an alternate sources to subsidize education, as the burden of school taxes is excessive on just the property owner or the homeowner. And the board and myself will continue to keep taxes low without reducing services to the residents. And that's basically it for me. And it is not just me, but everyone on this board. It is Joe Petty. His lights just went out, Joe's. There he is, back. And Joe, I'm going to ask you to say a few words too, because you're the only one I haven't. And other than that, Happy New Year to everyone. Joe, you have anything or not?
No comment, Gil. Thank you very much.
All right, very good. So with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to
Okay,
adjourn.
I see Lauren Mandel. There is no, at the organization meeting, there is, I see Lauren, I don't see Lauren, but at the organization meeting, there was no public comment and has never been since its inception. So with that, do we have a motion and a second, Joe? I'm sorry to go adjourn.
Yes. Motion was made by Councilwoman Green. It was seconded by Councilman Lobiondo. Motion made and seconded at 7:56 p.m. Mrs. Green,
Yes, and Happy New Year, everybody. Stay well.
Councilman Ruggiero. Mr. Ruggiero,
Paul, you're muted.
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
And meeting
All right,
adjourned.
thank you. Good night.